Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 9 of Culture Conversations. I'm Macdara.
And I'm George.
Indeed, you are. Today, we are going to be talking about change, which is a huge topic and very broad, but something that people have been asking us to talk about in terms of how to manage change well, how to deal with issues within that. And tables turned a bit this week, George. I'm going to be grilling you. You've caught me out with a few questions on the fly, so I'm going to be putting you through your paces on this topic. So do you want to give us a quick kind of intro into this episode and this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Macdara. So I'm already sweating based on what you're going to ask me. So I think what we're going to look to talk about today is I'm going to share an example of a change initiative that I was involved in my past, and look to call out some of the potential areas of risk with that project. Hopefully that then helps to set the scene a little bit before we'll then take our listeners and watchers through our model, because we certainly find that if you invest in your kind of capabilities, your culture and your leadership around change and transformation, it really can have a disproportionate impact and benefit on that program or programs and increase your likelihood of success.
Yeah. Okay, great. And was there a specific example maybe that you were going to take us through just to really kind of set the scene?
Yeah, so I'll do probably some of our viewers won't be old enough to know this analogy, but I'll do my Uncle Albert from Only Fools and Horses moment and say when I was in the war, and it felt like it at the time sometimes. So one example that really jumps to mind, I was brought in to lead a multi-year, multi-million-dollar technology change program. I wasn't brought in at the ground floor. I was brought in kind of midway through the program. So it was about 6 months into its life cycle, Macdara, which can in itself come with its own challenges. But when you work in change and transformation, you clearly do need to be quite adept at being parachuted in. The brief was for me to be or to operate as a fairly kind of what I refer to as turnkey project manager. So, making sure the project's on track, making sure that there is a suitable plan, that there is the budget's in place, it's being utilized effectively, etc., keeping the project moving forward.
Nice and easy.
Well, you can probably see where this is going.
Yeah.
And it was described to me as I started as a lack of capacity. So there wasn't sufficient, and if I'm specific, there wasn't specific change resources to be able to deliver upon the transformation program,
right.
Which can be a common thing, right? So what transpired was, unfortunately, I came into a program, a change initiative that was in distress. So anyone who works in kind of projects, it would be very much considered red or R4, to give it the terminology that we use. The lack of capacity was true, Macdara, so it certainly wasn't mislabeled in that way. But, and that lack of capacity was across not just the change team, but also the business team, so the subject matter experts who have to live with a solution day to day and might be involved in testing it, but then also the technology team as well. So there wasn't the requisite development resource to be able to actually code and bring this solution into life. But that also extended to capability too. So if I just give some examples, they were operating without any form of governance. So quite typically, what I would find coming into a change program is that they might be operating with governance that needs uplifting or might need some, things slightly adjusted. Sure. When I say that this program was operating without governance, I actually mean that. There was a complete lack of oversight, of that executive level scrutiny, of challenge, of metrics. So it really felt like the project was, theoretically moving forward, but it was moving forward in the dark, and it didn't have that level of buy-in and support from senior kind of stakeholders and sponsors.
Right. The normal, I guess, yeah, weekly, monthly meetings with working groups and steercos and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So, not only was it substandard, it was also actually not really there.
Yeah.
It was very
Okay.
ad hoc.
Yeah.
Secondly, they were operating in an environment where there was a real lack of trust, and that really existed in a them and us culture.
Right.
So between the business and the change team on one side and the technology team on the other side, there was a lot of infighting. There was a lot of, you'd be on calls and you'd have people kind of private messaging each other, bad mouthing people. Things were getting fingers were getting pointed. Blame was being attributed where things weren't getting done. There was a the whole organization badged themselves as working in an agile way with an agile delivery methodology. But what I described that I found was that they were fragile. And that isn't meant to sound pithy and like a soundbite.
I like what you've done there. Yeah.
It's not actually a me word, but I'll take it. I'll take the credit for it. But essentially what I found is they were operating in a fragile way. And what I mean by that is, and what that means is they were stuck between waterfall as a project delivery methodology and agile.
Okay.
And sometimes taking the best of both is actually the right approach. But what they were doing is not taking the best bits of either. So they were
in a conscious way, I guess. Sometimes you would pick and choose, right? But this was just whatever. They were freestyling.
Freestyling, exactly. And
okay.
When you're not benefiting from either methodology and either approach, what you find is things tend to head off in the wrong direction pretty quickly. And I guess the headline of all of that was that in the 6 months from inception through to certainly when I started to get involved, there was nothing that was built. And bear in mind, this is a technology change initiative. So nothing had been built for a number of reasons, including those that I mentioned.
Yep.
And no business value had been created. And that is a real challenge. When you say you're working in an agile way, you're meant to be looking for incremental delivery and value being displayed and delivered into the business.
Yeah. Straight away, through your sprints and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Exactly. At that point, the project, when I joined it, and quickly realized it was in real distress.
Okay, well, you've certainly set the scene there, George. So I think what we'll do, is to dive into how you could turn something like that around, how you could avoid it in the first place. And so we'll jump in to the model and you can take us through that.
Yeah, so I'm going to, hopefully technology is on my side today, and I'm going to try and bring up just a visual aid. Hopefully everyone can see that, really just to lay out the fundamentals of the model, and we're going to share a more detailed explainer probably next week, Macdara.
Yeah.
So obviously we like a powerful acronym because it helps make it memorable. And capture it and share it throughout the business. So our model for successful and lasting change and transformation is the acronym FORWARD, shortened because there are 4 component parts. What I'll do is I'll list them each out now, and then we'll go into each in a little bit more detail. So the first F is future direction. And what we mean by future direction is see the destination and believe in the value. And again, we'll come back to talking about that in a sec.
Sure.
R, relationships and collaboration. And that is trust and connection, accelerate change. W, working governance. Clearly something we spoke about a second ago. And that's guidance that empowers and doesn't constrain. And then D, delivery capability and adaptation. And that's executing with skill and learning as you go. And the reason for us suggesting this as a model is not because we are purists and we're telling people they have to take this as is and try and shoehorn it into an organization. But it goes back to that message that if we invest in our capabilities, our culture, our leadership that support and deliver change and transformation, it's got a much higher likelihood of being successful.
Yeah. And like the other models that we've discussed and shared, it's about these being the key components that we see as being essential to, successful hybrid working or culture change, right? It's not that it's rigid, as you say, but these are absolutely key tenets of any structure that you need to have.
That's right.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Are we going to jump into F?
Absolutely. I'm going to try and stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
1 second. Okay, hopefully we're back. So F, or future direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try and bring this to life by saying, for people who use Waze in their car, if you're on a long journey, you might be taking the family or friends to somewhere. Having a change and transformation program without this element of future direction is a bit like not putting the destination into Waze and then expecting it to take you where you want to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that's why we say about see the destination, obviously involves setting the destination, but see the destination and believe in the value. So,
sorry, a quick, just as it pops into my mind there, is
it.
that around the bigger picture, the bigger vision, or is that also around, I guess, in some of the technology change we'll have been involved in, where there are a very strict set of requirements set out to list exactly what they expect, the system to do when you click this button. So is it that bigger picture down to the little detail, or what exactly do you mean by direction?
So when I think of direction, Macdara, I think about the vision and the future state operating model. So
Right.
the vision being yes, it's slightly bigger picture. It should still be tangible, and it should be rooted in, what we as a business want to be able to achieve in the future, the experience it creates for our colleagues, the cost reduction, the risk reduction, whatever it might be, but then also how that exists in a future state operating model. Because so often, and I've certainly seen it in my career, companies, teams go on change and transformation initiatives. They kind of know what they want to do. They kind of know how they're going to get there. But what they don't think about maybe is how that coexists with everything in the ecosystem once that change has been delivered. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that the lower level information, so requirements, delivery cadence, ways of working, that will typically come into D. So we'll come to that in a sec, around your delivery capability. So are you documenting the change in the right way? Are you delivering it in the right way? That will come into your delivery capability. But, I always say people follow what they can see. So it's easier to build followership around change and transformation where you make the future tangible to people. So that is having a vision that is not just compelling and is written on the walls and people see as a bit of a soundbite, but where they see it and they feel it and they know exactly what their work and their effort is going to lead to, they're going to be more committed. They're going to be more bought into that change. And that is where the culture of change is so important. It's not just a structure and a delivery of something. It's also having the people bought in. And when you have that clear, inspiring vision for the future and how it coexists in the future state operating model, it will reduce fear, it will reduce resistance, and it will get rid of ambiguity. And that in itself will get you so far along the journey with delivering successful change and transformation that is more likely to last than if you didn't make a conscious effort to do that at the outset of a piece of work. Right. Something that we spoke about recently, and we're working with a client at the moment around defining a response to a people-related challenge that they have in their business. And we've spoken a lot with him around making sure that you're defining beneath your vision, your business outcomes. So what are the things, the value that is going to be delivered into the business, the results that are going to be felt that everyone can rally behind, right? So it's coming down a level from the vision, because people sometimes struggle to get on board with a vision at that level.
It can be a bit vague. Yeah.
Right. It can be a bit ethereal to them. It can be, okay, I kind of get it, but how do I play a role in that? And the business outcomes are your fairly finite set of things that are going to be achieved. And when I say finite, we're talking 5, 6, 7 things, ideally, not your 20, 30 things, because you can also track those lower down. But this is your higher level business outcomes, the things that if we deliver this change successfully is going to be the benefit that we're going to realize.
Right. And that are presumably measurable, right? So that can be demonstrated, right?
Exactly. And that's where you focus on, beneath your business outcomes, having your measures of success as well. So being able to say, can we draw a straight line between the effort we're putting in, the outcome it's going to achieve, and how that is being articulated and measured? You should be able to say yes, because going into projects without that lack of specificity creates ambiguity. And from that, people may feel less engaged, they may feel less trusting, but also, Macdara, they might not know their roles in the change. And so having that almost waterfall or tiered system of a vision supported by business outcomes measured by your measures of success is much more likely to get people on the journey with you.
Yeah. Okay. So is that, I'm trying to think of some sort of F all joke, but is that all of F covered there?
Look, I think I would, before we move on to R, the relationships and collaboration, I think I would just call out 2 points, right, to really drive this home. And that is that often with projects and change, we get really focused and sometimes singularly, easy for me to say, focused on technical or, the hard outcomes that we want. Actually, don't lose sight of cultural and behavioral outcomes. And that links to your future state operating model, right, as well. But don't over prioritize functional outcomes too highly above your cultural and behavioral ones, because they can be as critical. And if they're overlooked, people can have that change resistancy. And the other piece I would say is that vision, that North Star that we're trying to align our business towards or point our change program towards. The most effective leaders I've seen tell a story around that, and they bring it to life through making that end state and the journey that people are going to be on believable and relatable. And there's a real skill set around business storytelling and how that can be really impactful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so moving on to a letter which I get a lot of abuse from my kids for mispronouncing as R, whereas or is what I say, but let's go to R and take us through that one, please.
Will do. I won't make any joke about your pronunciation of the letter R. So relationships and collaboration. Now, this seems like it should be really obvious, right? Most of us work in organizations that are human-led, human-centric. We work in teams of people. We've not quite been taken over by machines yet, although that might not be that far. And therefore, having those two things, the relationships in place and the collaboration between teams and functions, is so important. And having that trust and connection is one of the main things that is going to accelerate your change and give you a higher degree of confidence in it being successful and lasting. And I go back to the example, Macdara, of, when I landed in that project, 6 months in, there'd been a massive breakdown in relationships, trust, communication, connection. There was a lot of friction. There was a lot of eye rolling. And even if you had everything else in place, even if everything else was fine, the requirements, the methodology, the governance, I think that would still have found itself struggling to deliver. So it's, this sounds a bit cliched, but collaboration is a superpower when it comes to projects. You're working together hours and days a week for potentially months at a time. it can't be a nice to have. It has to be front and center of what you do. And that starts from the executive, the C-suite, who are the sponsors typically,
Yeah.
down through the kind of more senior kind of middle management
Mm.
into the project teams. And that is where I, as a project manager or program manager, actually take it upon myself when I'm involved in the delivery of change to also take a cultural, behavioral, relationship level lens to making sure that people have that trust and that connectivity.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I think back to some of the bigger change programs that I was involved in, often the biggest challenge were teams who were outside of the group that were going to benefit from the change and whatever was being done, which was probably a big benefit to other groups, actually maybe set them backwards or change the process. And they, quite rightly, would often resist the change. And that was then where that collaboration piece, as you say, that's cascading down from the higher levels into those teams becomes super important. And you've really got to pull on your relationship skills, your influencing skills, right, to navigate that challenge for that team because they could derail the whole project. So
And
yeah,
that's where I completely agree. And that's where a lot of organizations now are moving to a system or a methodology referred to as value streams or value stream mapping.
mm-hmm.
And, Agile talks about the concepts of pods, where it doesn't really matter where you're based in the organization. You come together to deliver a piece of work, irrespective of if you're in the business, change, technology, wherever you might be. Now, we're not going to sit here and say that, again, people need to be purists, because I'm a strong believer that if you try and shove a square peg in a round hole, so to speak, it will end up doing more harm than good.
Yep.
However, getting people to think along the lines of the mission and the vision, as opposed to my area, my kingdom that I'm going to look after and represent and be defensive over. If you struggle to break down that siloed thinking as it relates to change and transformation, you're going to find your chances of success and buy-in much less.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one thing I would always talk about is transparency. So you can have great relationships and great collaboration, but if people don't feel empowered to be open, to share problems, to talk about delays, and without that fear of someone's going to shout at me just because something is overdue. Now, clearly, if someone is just not doing their job, that requires a different conversation. But I've seen so many working groups and governance meetings descend into finger pointing because everyone is sat there saying, yes, we're on track. Yes, we're on track. And then the one person that says, well, actually, this piece of development is behind because we had something else come in, or 3 people were off sick, or whatever the reason is. People have to feel that they can be vocal and collaborate actively. So again, it comes from that creation of an environment of trust and collaboration, as opposed to people feeling like they're going to be penalized for being open and transparent, because then they will just hide away from telling the truth.
Yeah, it's those items that have stayed just slightly under the radar in all the updates, and then all of a sudden it's a big problem, and it's it's a real issue for the project, and then the blame game starts, as you say. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, we ready for W?
I think so. My favorite topic, working governance.
Yep.
So look, we did a whole episode on governance, right? It was not specific to change and transformation, but clearly a lot of it was relevant. So I'm not going to discuss this in as so much detail. But I guess my point with governance as it relates to change and transformation in particular is that it is so important. I cannot stress enough the importance of having some sort of governance in place. Now, again, I would never try and be a purist and say your governance has to look like this, because some people, for some organizations, light touch governance is better, and actually it suits the culture of the organization more. governance should enable progress, not block it and stifle it. So if you find that you're meeting, and I'm making it up here, once a week, you're talking about the same things, you're not making decisions, you're struggling with escalations, your governance is kind of getting in the way and it's not effective. So it's about having clear accountability, about having clear decisions. All governance forums that I've been involved with will have something like a RACI matrix, so it will show who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, who's informed. It will have a RAID to show your risks, assumptions, issues, dependencies. But again, it's not becoming so caught up in what these things have to be and have to look like. It's more about having a forum for open communication, conversation, for showing progress. And again, I go back to that leadership point. The best governance I've seen is actively attended by senior people. They are present. They're not, distracted and doing 101 other things at once. Partly just because it shows they're engaged in the program and they back it and they believe in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that, and absolutely, because otherwise you have a governance function that is there in name, but actually people show up, go through the motions, fudge their way through. There's no real accountability. So, in my experience, as you say, where you have that senior attendee at that regular meeting, it sharpens the mind, it brings the focus, because some projects have their own momentum because whatever, it's got enough attention or it's got enough resource and it's kind of churning through. There are others that, it's a slog for everybody and it's a pain and nobody wants to do it. Yep. So often they need even more focus. But absolutely, you need that accountability when everyone shows up to keep it moving forward.
Yeah, and on the subject of moving it forward, for me, governance, and I am going to come back to a more technical, logistical recommendation in a second, but got to your point, Macdara, governance should be a mechanism and a vehicle for empowering decisions that can accelerate your change.
Yeah.
So it's about balancing control, which is massively important, right? If you talk to any regulator who oversees any industry, but that there will be change at the center of those industries, partly because of what the regulators ask.
Yeah.
They will expect governance forums, steercos, boardcos, excos, whatever it is, to have control, to have oversight, to have metrics, to be able to demonstrate what's happening, what's not happening. But the governance should not do that at the expense of providing the ability for quick decisions that are effective, that enable change in the best way for the organization, because then it just becomes something to slow you down as opposed to something to empower the organization and the change to be successful.
Yeah, and to speed it up, I guess like a good manager, a good governance forum actually clears the obstacles.
Absolutely.
So when working well, the person, that senior person, is actually saying, what's the problem? Okay, what can I do to help? Not some sort of mudslinging forum, right?
Absolutely. And then come back with where you've been able to help. That is so powerful, right? Yeah. So the technical logistical thing that I said I was going to recommend, when in a change and transformation environment, if you are either setting up governance or you're looking to maybe uplift your governance slightly, I would recommend looking to have a terms of reference in place. And it doesn't have to be reams and reams of pages. If anything, I'd say don't have that. It could just be 1 or 2 sides of A4 that shows roles, responsibilities, who needs to be there, how decisions are made, how often the group gets together. And then the role of the chair or chair people is to hold the group to account against that terms of reference and refresh it once every, let's say, 6 months, but clearly that depends on the length of the change program.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. Are we ready for D?
I think so. Yeah. So D is delivery capability and adaptation. So execute with skill, learn as you go. The simplest way of thinking about this is if you try to make a cake and you didn't have eggs, and I hope I'm not offending any vegans when I say this, but if you try to make a cake and you don't have eggs, you're going to struggle to make a cake. So that's the capability piece, right? The adaptation is being able and willing to change ways of working and being able to adapt and being able to factor new ways of thinking and maybe mistakes that have been made back into your change and transformation initiative. So capability for me is never about numbers, because you can throw numbers of people at a piece of work. Not only are you probably not going to increase your chances of success, you might actually jeopardize that, because you're going to just be filling the team with warm bodies as opposed to people that can actually deliver effectively. So it's about looking for a right-sized change team supported by a right-sized business team and a right-sized technology team, ideally all pulling in the same direction. And then having that adaptation. So if I think about, again, I go back to agility, and no, I'm not saying the term agile, because I have never been someone that, grandstands agile as a concept, but I do think a lot of the underlying principles are really important and can help you be successful. So it's about, a lot of people do retrospectives. I think that's a great way of factoring in what you've learned, what's gone well, what hasn't gone so well, back into your next sprint or your next delivery cycle, and having that ability to maintain discipline through having the right resources, number of and capability of, but then change your ways of working, learn from what's happened, having an open feedback environment and culture, and then looping that back into your transformation will materially increase your chances of being successful.
Yeah, like anything, I guess, if you're reflecting on what's worked, what hasn't, and you're honing the process, that's only going to help. I think what also jumped out at me there, I think, in my experience of the capability, is often people forget the institutional knowledge piece of capability. So in organizations where you've got maybe old infrastructure and certain individuals hold a lot of information. So making sure that your bench or your kind of team has a broad range of knowledge, or that you have access to individuals with not just the, I guess, technical skills, the newer skills from a tech perspective, but also that institutional knowledge of the organization and its systems to look out for booby traps or certain very specific pieces that need to happen to really complete the change agenda.
Yep, agreed. So I've just brought this back on screen as just a summary, right? And we're going to share more about this over the next week. But I really would emphasize the bottom kind of line that runs along the beneath the model. And that's, if you invest in having the right leadership culture, capabilities, models, methodologies, all of this stuff, you are going to turn the dial massively on your chances of being successful with change and transformation and getting that change and transformation to stick.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you very much, George. Really enjoyed that. And we'll look to share that with everybody. So having taken us through the model, George, thanks for that. I had a question, something that I've been reading this week, and it has been around, but I guess a lot of organizations are deploying AI across their businesses, but the return on investment is quite low, right? So there are a lot of change initiatives happening around that. How would you say that this model, this forward model, can relate to those types of initiatives, and particularly in terms of making sure that they actually are effective and delivering that return on investment?
It's a good question, right? So I think when I look at AI as a capability, I think where people maybe get hung up is that AI has to be the be all and end all. And actually, for me, AI in the future is going to be part of our toolkit, and it's looking for ways to use it in, helping us go better, smarter, faster, reducing some of the kind of humans having to sit there, chew through huge amounts of data, for
Yeah.
example. And obviously it's coming, right? And
Yeah.
we know that because it's already here. And therefore, I think the firms that can take advantage of AI in the right places, plugging it in the right way, are going to realize benefits that those that are resistant to it may not be able to. I think if I think about the model as it relates to, so the forward model as it relates to AI, future direction, if I was a business leader or a change leader looking at bringing in a piece of technology, irrespective of AI, but using AI as an example, we need to be able to demonstrate to our people and tell them the business story why we're doing this.
Okay.
Right. So I think there's a lot of change resistancy around AI is going to be a threat to me.
And why they should use it, I guess, and why we're bringing it in and to make it part of the fabric of the organization.
That's right. We're going to remove you from doing quite mundane tasks that might be like chewing through false positives and false negatives, whatever. And actually, we're now going to free you up to do more of the looking at exceptions, investigation type work that at the moment, AI is not quite at the level to be able to do that as well as a human being, or you wouldn't maybe have the trust that you might have in a skilled person. The relationships and collaboration, I think these are really key, right? So when we talk about relationships and collaboration, a lot of it is about trust and around it links to the story, so that vision piece. But for me, if we think about how we expect our workforce to be able to collaborate with technology in the future, telling that story, being able to build this up into a view of this is going to make us better as a business because of ABC, XYZ, and then having the right teams of people involved, feeling like they're part of the journey, is going to be kind of fundamental to a piece of work. Right. Governance, the working governance piece, so W. This is really crucial when it comes to something fairly cutting edge, fairly transformational, like AI, is making sure that you've got the right eyes on it. Right. So I think that is not meant in a someone standing over you with a clipboard kind of way, but is having the right level of scrutiny, oversight, and understanding at a C-suite level of what it is the change you're trying to make. Because again, in the eyes of the regulators, executives are still expected to have an understanding of what is happening, how it's being done, what the risks might be. You can't say my accountability has been outsourced to a bot or a piece of artificial intelligence.
Sorry, George, I think we lost each other there. So if you wouldn't mind just covering, you're kind of tackling D there in the last part of that as it relates to AI. If you could pick up from there, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So D, delivery capability and adaptation for change and transformation involving AI. So look, AI introduces uncertainty, rapid iteration, and continuous learning. Without strong delivery capability, and that's across the business, change and technology, and a culture that embraces adaptation, organizations could quickly find themselves overwhelmed rather than transformed, right? So implementing AI well means building a system that can evolve as fast as the technology does, which, as you and I and many viewers and watchers will know, at the moment that shows no signs of slowing down, right? So that model needs to combine skilled teams, real-time insight, responsible experimentation, and the confidence to adjust course quickly as required. So in summary, when the right foundations are in place, AI becomes a catalyst for value. Without them, it becomes a source of risk, rework, and potentially lost momentum. So hopefully that answers your question, Macdara.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as with any change, it all applies. And I think particularly in what strikes me out of a lot of the lack of ROI on the AI thing is that trust both in the tools that people are being asked to use and that they see the value in using them, but also, as you say, from the organization to trust new technology and experiment, as you said there, right, in a kind of safe and controlled way, give people the opportunity to play around with things because everybody's using it. Are they doing it in a way that doesn't introduce risk into your business and infrastructure? So, yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. That was great. Thank you. So thank you for that, George. Very comprehensive, I think, and we will share the model with everybody in a bit more detail through the usual channels. As ever, please give us your feedback. Let us know if there's anything you would like us to discuss in an upcoming episode. Get in touch with us through LinkedIn or hello@polarispraxis.com. With that, we will end the episode. So it's goodbye from him.
And it's goodbye from me.